Okay, welcome back, everyone. We're going to have another night where we learn together the Haggadah. We start speaking about Pesach and all of the amazing inyanim, the different ideas that we have to give us the emunah, the faith that we certainly need during these trying times in history and these very trying times for the Jewish people as well. There is a famous verse that we have in the Torah from a few weeks ago, and it says the following: Anochi Hashem Elokecha. God is talking about the great mitzvah of emunah, believing in Him, and He says, "I am Hashem, your God." Asher would say, "Sicha me'eretz Mitzrayim." I took you out of the land of Egypt, mi beis avadim, from the house of bondage. This is the introduction that the Jewish people have to the Master of the universe, and He wants to instill upon us a reason why it is that we have an obligation every single day of our lives to believe in Him. And He says, you know why you should believe in me? Because I am the God that took you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, out of the slavery from Mitzrayim. And the Ibn Ezra and many others ask the following question: if you are God and you are about to teach to the world that you are the master of the universe, you are the creator of this universe, you are running the world so beautifully with perfect symmetry and synergy, so you want to bring a proof that is going to let the Jewish people and the world know why they should believe in you and serve in you. So therefore you should bring the greatest miracle, the greatest wonder, the most amazing and impressive act that you ever did before in your life. You want to show your true godliness. Ask the Ibn Ezra, so what would that act be? I don't think that I would choose that I took the Jewish people out of Egypt, that was isolated, it was a small nation, it was 3 million people. Yes, there were signs and wonders, all that is true, but that pales in comparison to the most amazing, unbelievable feat that anybody or anything, any being could possibly do. And that is called the creation of the universe. Hashem made a world, yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. He created every little ounce, every mineral, every aspect of this world, every animal, all the water, all the oxygen, all the everything that we could possibly have, Hashem put into this world. That's much more impressive than the fact that He saved the nation of slaves and He brought them into freedom. So why doesn't God tell us, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem your God? And the reason that you should believe in me is because I created the world. I'm omniscient. I'm omnipotent. I'm the master of all of the powers. I put it all together in a perfect package. Nobody else in the world can do what I did. And yet God decided not to bring that as the proof of why it is that we should believe in Him. The proof that He brings, which all of our faith is predicated upon, is Anochi Hashem Elokecha asher hotzeisicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am the God who took you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Why? Why is that the most important thing for us to pin our faith upon? And the Mefarshim, the commentators, explain each one in a little bit of a different language, but the message is unified. And that is that there is something incredible about the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, of the exodus of the Jewish people from Egypt, of the salvation, of the redemption, of the miracles, of the signs, of the wonders, of the upheaval of all of Egypt, in order that the Jewish people should recognize once again who the God of this world really is. And to quote the words of the Orchos Chaim, which was written by the Rosh, one of the great Rishonim, the great earlier commentators, maybe about 900 years ago, he says the following words: Misha einai ma'amin, someone who doesn't believe, asher would say sicha me'eretz Mitzrayim, if he doesn't believe in the last part of this verse, which says, I am the God who took you out of the land of Egypt, Af ba'anochi Hashem Elokecha eino ma'amin. They also do not believe in the first part of the verse, which says, I am Hashem, your God. Says the Rosh, if you don't believe in the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, of the Exodus, if you don't believe in all the signs and all of the wonders and the miracles that Hashem did, if you don't believe that Hashem split the sea and he brought pestilence down to this world, if you don't believe that he turned Paro and his entire nation into groveling victims of the wrath of Hashem, then you do not truly believe in Hashem himself. If you can't believe that Moshe Rabbeinu lifted up his staff and he waved it over the sea, and before you knew it, there was a miracle and the Jewish people were going through, then you don't actually believe in God himself. Why not? What is so remarkable about Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Exodus from Egypt, that we do not see by the creation of the world? And here, the Tosefos Yom Tov explains in the following way, and that is that the hallmark of the Jewish people, from the moment that we were redeemed from Mitzrayim, from Egypt, has always been the belief that not only did Hashem create the world, not only does Hashem see the world and know what's going on, but even more importantly, Hashem is intimately involved in every aspect of the creation, and that he watches over the lives of each and every one of us as an individual, as a family, as a nation, as a universe. And not only does he watch over the lives of each and every one of us, he's actively involved in our lives. He is actively doing things and setting the stage and running the show and putting the roadblocks in our way, or giving the blessings in our way as well. Everything that happens in the world and in our lives is under the jurisdiction of something that we refer to as hashgacha pratis, which means divine providence and intervention. There is nothing in a person's life that is not being decided and being decreed and being run and being guided by the benevolent hand of Hashem himself. And therefore, when it comes to our emunah, our faith, when it comes to the foundation of which we are going to base all of our belief upon, we can't pin it on the creation of the world. For the creation of the world was a place in time nobody was around. There was emptiness. It was unformed. It was void. It was a world with only God's presence and existence. And out of the nothingness, because there was no physical world, there were no human beings, there were no fish that were swimming in the sea, there wasn't even a sun that was shining down on the ground, Hashem decided he wants to make a world in order that you and I will be the benefactors of his chesed, of his kindness, of his mercy, of his compassion, where he'll give us the opportunities to get closer and closer to him. But do you see hashgacha pratis? Do you see divine intervention? Do you see how he manipulates the lives of everyone that is there? No, because nobody is there. Do you see the triumph of the nation of the Jewish people over the enemies who thought that they were on top of the world? No, you don't see that, because there was no nation. That was Klal Yisrael, and there was no nation that was going against us. Do you see a person in their life struggling and suffering and daven and ask Hashem, please help me through this? And suddenly, unexplainably, out of nowhere, the greatest blessings befall this person and the problems are solved and eradicated? No, you don't see that in the creation of the world. Because the creation of the world was the vast universe where Hashem was putting in all of the pieces, all of the details that were there in order that he would set the stage for all of mankind to come. Says the Ibn Ezra, says the Rosh over here, the reason that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, believe in me because I am the one who took you out of Egypt is because you must recognize that the exodus from Egypt was miraculous, but miraculous in the way that Hashem revealed himself to the world and to our nation like he never revealed himself before. Every act was calculated. Every plague was what we would call midah kineged midah, measure for measure, to pay back the Mitzrayim, the Egyptians, for some of the evil and the wicked and the harsh servitude that they brought to us. Every step of the way was based upon how much are the Jewish people going to engage in prayer, in following the directives of Hashem, in committing themselves to his mitzvahs, in trying to make themselves a nation that will bond together, ba'achdus, with unity instead of being apart. How much will that be? And everything that God does is a response and is an action where he's able to reveal himself again and again and again. And the only way that you can truly have faith in God is if your belief is predicated on the foundation that he not only created the world and not only watches the world, but he runs the world perfectly, and there is nothing that escapes his glance. The Ramban writes in the end of Parshas Bo, which is a famous Ramban, which is something that he worked to be able to explain so beautifully. And he says, why do we have so many mitzvahs in the Torah that are called Zecher L'Yetzias Mitzrayim, to remind us of the exodus from Egypt? You put on tefillin in the morning, it reminds you of the exodus from Egypt. You say Kiddush on Friday night, and on Yom Tov and on Pesach is going to come soon. It reminds you that Hashem redeemed us from Egypt. You'll eat the matzah, you'll eat the maror, you'll lean to the side. Everything that we're going to do by the Seder, Haggadah, the whole story of our redemption, it's all to remind us of what took place when we were slaves in Egypt and Hashem brought us to freedom. Why are so many of the mitzvahs that we have throughout the year? So many. Why are they there to remind us of the exodus from Egypt? Obviously, there is a central idea that a person must remind themselves, and truthfully, we have a mitzvah to remind ourselves of this every single day, that we were once slaves, and then we were redeemed through God's outstretched arm, through his might and his miraculous nature, that he took us out of Egypt. Why is that such an amazing, amazing foundation? Says the Ramban the following. You should know that at the time of the servitude of the Jewish people in Egypt, there were three major mistakes that the world was making at that time in their belief or disbelief of God. One of them was, as the Ramban writes, there were people that were kafrim. They denied the existence of God altogether. And they said this world is just an olam kadmon, which means it existed by itself. It came into being all by itself. I mean, it's pretty incredible that the world could fall into place exactly as it did. It's pretty amazing that the sun is positioned in the sky exactly at the millimeter that it needs to be, because one drop closer would burn the world up to smithereens. One drop farther, the world would freeze over like an ice age. It's pretty amazing that fish have gills and they can swim in the ocean, but if you take them out onto dry land, they'll suffocate, they can't breathe. And yet if you take a human being who has oxygen and has nostrils to be able to breathe this air, and you put him into the water, he'll drown, he'll die, he won't be able to survive. Yes, it's pretty amazing that the body has two eyes that can see. It has hands that can feel and that it can touch. It has teeth that can chew and grind the food. It has intestines that can digest. It's pretty amazing, but it just happened to be that way. Yeah, but if you ask that same person, you're looking at this computer right now, and I'm sitting in one place, you're sitting somewhere else, maybe you're across the world right now, I have no idea. And we're actually looking at each other, and you can hear me, and we are learning Torah together. What if I would tell you that this computer, I walked into my office, and lo and behold, there were pieces falling out of the sky, and the computer fell into the way that it was. And what if I told you the program Zoom, which obviously has a lot of chachma, a lot of wisdom behind it, and a lot of intelligence and ingenious ways. You know what? It's pretty amazing. You might not believe this, but it just happened all by itself. You would tell me, you must be crazy. I'm not going to believe such a thing. Well, somebody who believes that the world just happened by itself is even crazier than the person who believes that Zoom happened by itself. And one computer in the world can make itself. And one car and one building, all the pieces fell into place. However, there were people at that time in history who believed the world was an olam kadmon, was a world that just existed on its own. It created itself. That's one kind of person. Says the Ramban, there was another kind of a person. And that was someone, he believed, you know what, it's impossible the world came into being by itself. I'm not that distant from believing in a superpower. Of course, it has to be a God. Look how the symmetry, look at the perfection, look how everything fell into place exactly the right way. I'll believe that much. But God got the ball rolling, put everything into motion, and then he said, sayonara, I'm finished, and he left, and he went to take care of some other business. And he left the world unto itself. Which means all the peoples, all the lives, all the events of history, all of the historical events, and all the events that take place naturally in the world, of the upheavals, everything, the wars, the battles, people born, people die, everything, just happening by itself. Just happens by itself. Anybody have a pet? Can your dog take care of itself? Does it know how to feed itself? Does it know how to go to the Pooch Hotel over there and get its nails cut and have its hair done? No, it doesn't. It needs an owner to come and take care of it and feed it and give it bedding at night and keep it warm. Does a fish in your tank know where to get food from? No, not at all. If it wouldn't be for you, who is so kind to buy the little food and sprinkle it on top, the fish would never eat. Can a car get gas by itself? No, you get the car, and if you don't fill up the tank, there's no gas that is there. And yet there are people that believe the world continues to run and to exist without any intervention at all. The last case, says the Ramban, is those people who believe that Hashem created the world, and that in fact Hashem actually is watching over the world, but he can't do anything about what's going on in the world. He's like sitting in a movie theater, and he's watching the scene unravel in front of his eyes, and he's looking at everybody live their life, and he wants to do so much, but he is constrained from being involved and engaged in this world. Says the Ramban, these three people, number one, someone who denied that there is a creator at all and thought that this world was created all by itself. Number two, the person who believes there is a God. He created the world, but he doesn't know at all what's going on in this world because he checked out a long time ago, thousands of years ago. And the third person is, I believe in God. I actually believe that He is watching what's going on in the world, but He's not involved and He cannot do anything. Says the Ramban, if you look at all of the plagues that Hashem brought upon the Egyptians, so besides the fact that He was trying to destroy Egypt and let them know that there really is a God in this world, He had to teach the Jewish people what it means that there's a God in this world. And what were those three things? Number one, I created the world. Number two, I know exactly what's going on in this world. And number three, most importantly, I run the world with hashgacha pratis, divine intervention. I am intimately involved in your life. I know everything that is going on around you. I see it all. I'm aware of it all. I write it all down. I keep track of it. And I will be the one, says Hashem, I'm going to come and be part of your life and guide you in the pathways that are the best for you. When you see all the plagues and you see how Hashem destroyed the land of Egypt, and yet by every single plague, the Jewish people untouched. He knew who deserves to live and who deserves to die. He knew which animals belong to the Jewish people. They will not be affected by the animal disease that kills them. And he knows which animals belong to the Egyptians and they should die. He knew who had Egyptian skin and the lice would come and fill them up. They couldn't stop scratching. And he knew who had Jewish skin where the lice never even touched them. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then at the end of it all, miracles of miracles, wonders of wonders, signs of all signs, Hashem decides to bring the Jewish people out of the land of Egypt into redemption, into we call the Geula, where we went free. He took us through the splitting of the sea so perfectly, seamlessly, He split it. And then He brought us at the end of 49, 50 days to Mount Sinai, where we would eventually receive the Torah, which would solidify for us this mitzvah of Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am Hashem, your God. You should believe in me. Why? Because I took you out of Egypt. Why should you believe in me? Because I took you out of Egypt. Because in that exodus and in that redemption, and from that slavery, you learn three amazing things. I created the world. I know what's going on in the world. And I'm intimately involved in everything that is going on. There's an amazing, amazing story which took place several years ago in Eretz Yisrael, in Israel. There was a yeshiva bacher who had been dating for quite some time, and he was having a very hard time getting married. And the reason was because he had a long scar that ran down the side of his face. And every time that he would go out on a date, even though he was charming, and he was sweet, and he was warm, and he was funny, and he had a great personality, and he was very well recommended by all of his rabbis and his friends and family. But once that the girl would see this long scar running down his face, which really was a tremendous blemish, they used to get scared off and they would call the shidduch off. So he went one day to the house of Rav Chaim Kanievsky, one of the leading sages of our generation. And he came to him and he told him, I'm getting older, I've been dating for so many years. And I try so hard to get married, but every time the girl sees this scar on my face, they get bothered by it. And that's the end of the shidduch. It's over. And he said, Rebbe, what am I supposed to do? So Rav Chaim Kanievsky says to this young man, the next date that you go on, tell the girl the story how you got the scar that is there on your face. And the boy said, and that's it? And Rav Chaim Kanievsky said, that's it. Baracha v'hatzlacha, you should have blessing and success. Tell the girl the story of how you got the scar. The next date, not long after that meeting, he meets a wonderful young lady, and they're having a wonderful conversation, and he's making jokes, and she's laughing, and she's smiling, and he's smiling. And suddenly, in the middle of their conversation, he notices that her eyes begin to wander to the scar on the side of his face. And as he sees her eyes, he can see that she's getting very uncomfortable. And he knows that the end of the date is coming near. But he is reminded of the words of Rav Chaim Kanievsky, who told him, on the next date that you go out on, tell the girl the story how you got the scar on the side of your face. So he looks at the young lady and he says, are you looking at my scar? No. You're looking at my scar, aren't you? Would you like to know why I have this scar? Let me tell you the story. About 5 years ago, I was walking one Shabbos morning to the Kosel, to the Wailing Wall, and it was quiet. And in the quiet hours of the morning, many people decide to walk through the Arab Quarter. It saves a lot of time. It's easy to get there to the Wailing Wall from that point. And I was walking down the steps, and everything was quiet, and everything was nice. And suddenly I hear screaming. I hear young women shrieking and screaming at the top of their lungs. And I go running, and I see that there's an Arab man with a knife in his hand, and he's running towards a group of what looks to me like Beis Yaakov girls, and he's wielding this knife, and he's about to go and stab them. And in a fit of surge of energy, I run towards this man, and I start screaming, don't touch them! Don't touch them! And I jump towards the Arab to stop him from slicing them up. And he turns around with the knife, and it goes right into my face. And I'm lying there on the floor in a pool of blood, and the girls go running off to safety. They called Hatzalah, they called 911. They rushed me out of the Arab Quarter as soon as they possibly could. And they got me to the hospital, and they saved my life. I was bleeding profusely. And the plastic surgeon tried his best to patch up the wound that the knife had given into my cheek. And the lesion was so large. This is the best that they could possibly do. And that's why I have this gigantic scar running down my cheek. He looks across the table, and this young lady, her head is hanging down. And she can't even look up at him at this moment. And he says to her, is everything okay? I'm sorry if I scared you with the story. Is everything okay? And she looks up with tears in her eyes and she says, I've been wanting to thank you for the last 5 years of my life. I was one of those girls whose life you saved when you risked your own life and let us run into freedom and into safety. How can I ever thank you? I'm sure that you guessed the end of the story. The two of them ended up getting married to one another and living happily ever after. Hashem created the world. Hashem is watching over the world. And Hashem is involved in every aspect of our lives. Not just our lives, the lives of our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents. Going all the way back to the days of Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov. going back to the time of the beginning of creation of Adam Arishon, of the first man, and Chava, his wife. There has not been a second of this entire universe and all of mankind that God himself is not the main player, and making sure that everything is guided exactly the way that it should. Says Hashem, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha. I am Hashem, your God. Why should you believe in me? Because I'm the one who taught you who I am when I took you out of Mitzrayim, out of the house of bondage, out of the slavery. How I was maneuvering and running the universe in a way that nobody else could do besides me. Because I created the world, and I watch over the world, and I am involved in every single aspect of this world. And a person who comes to believe in Hashem like that, says Rabbi Yecheskel Levenstein, then you will believe with all of your heart and all of your might that just as Hashem in his infinite wisdom, in his omniscient knowledge and awareness of our lives and the world, was able to go down into the depths of Egypt and redeem each and every one of us from the gullus, from the exile, redeem us from the slavery, redeem us from the hardships, then a person will have the emunah shleima, the true belief, that no matter what situation a person finds themselves in, Hashem will rescue and save them and redeem them from that as well. Which is such a source of strength and comfort for each and every one of us as we're watching the world combust, fall apart at its very seams right now, locked up in our homes, guarded from human beings, closing the shuls, locking up the yeshivas, closing every place in this world right now so that we shouldn't spread any more disease that has already spread as much as it has. And a person could get hopeless and begin to wonder, will it be 2 weeks, 5 weeks, 5 months? Nobody knows. But one thing we know, just as Hashem, our God who created the world, and he watches over the world, and he knows what's going on in the world, and he's intimately involved in the world, just as he lifted us up out of the depths of Egypt, and he saved us, and he redeemed us, and he made us such a treasured nation like we spoke about last night. We're the golden nation. Our souls and hearts are pure gold. So too we have to believe the emunah shleima with complete faith that so too Hashem is going to redeem us from the state of affairs that we find ourselves in right now, again, as individuals, as families, as communities, as countries, globally as the world. There is nothing that escapes the power and the glance and the input and the abilities of Hashem. And therefore, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, believe in Hashem. Because just as he took us out of Mitzrayim, out of Egypt, he certainly will take us out of the coronavirus and everything that the world is going through now as well. And just as we celebrated and we sang and we danced through the splitting of the sea, with our Kodesh Baruch Hu's help, we will sing and we will celebrate and we will sing and we will dance, God willing, once again together as one. When Hashem will redeem us from the mess that the world is in right now, he'll lift us and our loved ones and all of mankind up together. Well, we'll recognize Hashem Hu Elokim. Hashem is the one and only God of this world. And in that zechus, in that mer may be zeiche to spend Pesach not this year locked up in quarantine in our homes, but rather together as one in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, B'imheira, B'yomenu. Have a wonderful night.